All right, man, peace. You know, brothers, David Robinson, he's such an interesting character. I remember when I worked in corporate America, every job that I was ever at, there was always a character on the job like a David Robinson. Some smiley faced Negro who always walked up to you, tried to act like he was your friend, and in all reality, he was trying to see what level of information he can get out of you to report back to the quote unquote big boss, whether that be the director or the manager of the department or what have you. Especially when they can sense that the energy on you is different, that you're a so-called black man who's not there to conform, you're just there to do your job, and people can sense that you're someone who's not willing to fit into the average black male paradigm in corporate America. They always have a guy like him. Hey, what's going on, brother? So, how are you? What do you think about so-and-so? And they just want to see what you think so that they can try to run back to management and give their little bullshit version of what they believe you're about. And without a doubt in my mind, that's what David Robinson is. He's going to give his quote-unquote testimony in regards to what he feels happened with the Kawhi Leonard situation on the San Antonio Spurs. And all he's going to show is how much of a big company man he is. And that's not always necessarily a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to be a company man as long as you know why you're there, what you're doing, and what your morals are. And you should never allow your morals to be assailed just to fit in and conform in a corporate structure. People like David Robinson don't truly comprehend that. And as Draymond Green would say, sometimes people are just cut from a different cloth. David Robinson, as we all know, was raised up in the military-industrial complex. Am I saying that he's an MK athlete? Who knows? Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. But I do know that whatever he is, Kawhi Leonard would not trust him as far as he could throw him, and I don't blame him. So let's see what David Robinson has to say about Kawhi Leonard. Of course, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
Absolutely. And of course, you mentioned San Antonio, so we have to ask you about the Spurs. You heard during our last segment, Kawhi Leonard, a bit of a topic of conversation. He, of course, made it known he wanted to be traded away.
Let me say this about David Robinson. He was one of the great natural athletes in the history of the NBA, certainly from the late 80s through the 90s. Unbelievable athlete. He was one of the many standout, exemplary big men of that era. But he could never overcome the upper echelon big men like Hakeem Olajuwon or Shaquille O'Neal. Whenever they faced him, they normally fared rather well. Now, Shaq is on record as stating that oftentimes he had issues with David Robinson on the floor because of David Robinson's mobility and the fact that David mastered that mid-range jump shot. He would force Shaq to come out and guard him. And that's the same reason why David Robinson could not do anything with Hakeem. Because everything that David could do, Hakeem could do better. Hakeem Olajuwon was by far the most fluid big man in the history of the NBA. To this day, there's no big man that's ever been in the league since him or before him that was as fluid as Hakeem. Once again, that's why he's on my top 10 list, because I think that you can make an argument for him as the greatest center of all time. Certain people may be incredulous to that, but I have no doubt about it. Hakeem Olajuwon defeated Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in a playoff series. He learned under Moses Malone. He defeated Patrick Ewing. He defeated David Robinson. He defeated Shaquille O'Neal, all in the playoffs. Hakeem was a dominant force from the mid to late 80s all the way through the mid to late 90s. But just getting back to David Robinson, great overall natural athlete. Do I think that he was on PEDs? Who knows? I'm not going to go that far. But I have little doubt that when it comes to the subtopic of whether or not he was an MK athlete, those waters are a bit murky.
You made a comment, interestingly enough, after that story broke, saying that you would have rather have heard directly from him. You said LeBron doesn't wait for other people to talk. Now that
That's another attempt at psychological manipulation. Kawhi Leonard, why are you not talking to us? LeBron would talk. That's what a bad significant other or a bad spouse does. They try to get whoever they're with to submit to their wishes by comparing them to someone else. That once again shows that they have very little respect for Kawhi's intellect and for his overall psychological profile. Because anyone who's been attentive to Kawhi Leonard and his ways would know that trying to use the comparative approach with Kawhi Leonard, trying to provoke jealousy or envy, that's the wrong way to go. He seems to be very secure in who he is. So, if anything, if I'm a David Robinson And this is assuming that David Robinson has the depth of thought process that he may try to act like he does. You should say to yourself, I've very rarely ever spoken to Kawhi. So if I'm going to try to speak to him and get information out of him, I should at least give up some information on myself and show some vulnerability within myself to see if that will activate some form of reciprocity within Kawhi that maybe he'll open up. That would have been my tactic, as opposed to trying to provoke jealousy, bringing up LeBron James's name, a player who Kawhi was able to defeat in the finals and won the finals MVP while guarding him in 2014. Bad way to go, sir.
Now that it's all said and done, he's in Toronto. What is your overall reaction to the situation and to Kawhi and how he handled this specifically?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the oddest situations I think I've seen since I've been in pro basketball.
Dave, you mean even odder than the alleged relationship status between you and Tim Duncan? Allegedly?
He's a hard guy to understand. He's a hard guy to read. And, you know...
Well, maybe when you're attempting to communicate with someone that's hard to read or hard to understand, sometimes it's a you issue and not a them issue. Sometimes you're accustomed to interacting or communicating with people a certain way, and when you're dealing with different people, you have to deal with them in a different way. There's a saying that you make exceptions for exceptional people. Kawhi Leonard is an exceptional athlete. He's an exceptional basketball player. If there are quirks that he has in his personality, maybe you should do your due diligence and check out his background, research his upbringing, see if there were any traumatic moments in his life that may have affected his outlook on the world, his communication skills, or at least his alleged communication deficiencies, and see if you can build a bridge with him like that, as opposed to trying to demonize him throughout the media, which is only going to make him retreat further and further into his protective shell, quote-unquote protective shell. Being quote-unquote defensive is not always a bad thing, because many of the people that we encounter in life are offensive.
You know, San Antonio, which we obviously have a reputation for taking care of our players almost too much. I mean, people criticize us for sitting guys down. Now, all of a sudden, you know, we've got a guy who says he felt pressure to play, which is, you know, tough. I mean,
Well, how would you know that it's tough that he's saying that he felt pressure to play if you're saying that you have not communicated with him? What we do know is that your coach, Greg Popovich, went on national television and alleged that Kawhi Leonard was given the green light to continue to play, despite the fact that Kawhi Leonard went and got a second opinion, and the opinion of those physicians stated that Kawhi Leonard's injury was not fully healed. So once again, why are we acting as if we're unsure as to whether or not there's a trust issue between Kawhi Leonard and the San Antonio Spurs, or at least there was?
What can you do? I mean, we typically don't risk our players' health, but...
Who is we? Are you a member of the San Antonio Spurs medical staff, David Robinson? You're answering your own question as to why Kawhi Leonard did not trust you.
You know, I mean, if a guy's not happy, he's got to, you know, go somewhere where he can play. And I think Pop and RC, our team did a pretty good job of you know, kind of meeting our needs for the future. I think we'll move on from here. I think we're pretty happy with the deal, and we'll continue to grow and get better.
Was there a point you ever spoke to Kawhi about all this or reached out to him? I know you're still around the team somewhat.
Has anybody spoke to Kawhi about this?
Kawhi Leonard told me he's not talking to you until you get a proper haircut and invest in some chapstick for your mouth. Kawhi wants to know, why does your hair look like an archipelago? He said, look at the top of your head, look at the Philippine Islands. What's going on, David Robinson? I think that the attention should be placed on you, because something is obviously going on with the top of your damn head.
I mean, I talked to his uncle. I mean, does that count?
Really?
You know, not...
You're lucky to get that type of access when it's obvious that you're nothing but a damn informant.
You know, I mean, he's a hard guy. I mean, he's just quiet. He doesn't, you know, I've reached out to him several times and just never hear anything back from him. I think the whole time he's been here, I've talked to him maybe a handful of times.
Well, if Kawhi Leonard was with your organization for 5 or 6 years and you spoke to him only a handful of times, why do you think that he would be receptive to your calls when it came to an issue as serious as him deciding whether or not he wanted to continue to play for that franchise, especially since he knows that you're a company man? What could you possibly have been calling him to see other than if you could glean some level of information or data that you could take back to Greg Popovich, the head of the Spurs CIA operations? I mean, give me a break.
And I can count on one hand how many words he's really said to me. So
maybe he's not feeling you like that. Maybe he's just not feeling the whole energy of that organization. Maybe he said to himself, you know what, Tim Duncan left, and ever since Tim Duncan left, I'm just not feeling this environment. That happens sometimes. Sometimes people are in an environment and the person that they're used to turning to for advice or for some type of support is no longer there, and they're not feeling that environment either. It happens.
He's just a quiet guy, and I think that's made it difficult, I think, for all parties to really understand each other in this process.
I don't think that it's made it that difficult. I'm not even in that environment, and I understand it perfectly fine, David Robinson. I think that something is just not permeating into your brain cells because you're a cult member. You're a member of the San Antonio Spurs cult. You're one of the leading members.
Oh, thank you for that answer. And I'll let our other guys here jump in because you got a big anniversary, right, Dave?
Yeah, so David, you're talking to a guy who still has one of those McDonald's Dream Team cups in his cupboard, like the 32-ounce plastic cup. Take me back to Monte Carlo, take me back to Barcelona, those closed-door practices. What sticks out to you about that experience? It's maybe the best basketball team ever assembled.
It was amazing. I think all of us coming into it knew it was going to be almost a surreal time.
I would have loved to have seen that first Dream Team go up against the Dream Team from 2012. I think that would have been a great game. They probably would have had to play a series. And I think that it would have been very competitive because, of course, Dream Team 1 had the greater players, but many of those players like Magic and Bird were older. So it would have been great to have seen that team go up against the 2012 quote-unquote Dream Team with Kobe and LeBron and KD. I believe Russ was on that team, CP3. They had a great lineup as well.
And I think that's what was special about it. When you've got all these guys, I'm looking next to me, I see, Larry Bird lying on the floor. I got, Stockton, Malone, Jordan, Magic. I got everybody there. And just learning from those guys, I think when they're on the other sideline, it's a different approach. But all of a sudden, when they're on your team, man, I get to, go into the weight room with Karl Malone. I mean, I get to learn his secrets on why he's so strong and so.
Yeah, you get to learn his secrets on what he's taken, allegedly.
And so crazy. It was amazing. Great experience. I think standing on that podium, winning that gold medal, for me, fulfilled a lot of childhood dreams because I watched the Olympics for so long, but I was standing.
Yeah, your team in 1988, they got smoked in the Olympics. Your team is the reason why they decided to greenlight the Dream Team in the first place. Because you guys blew the 1988 Olympics. You and Danny Manning and the other players that were on that team.
Standing in a moment that I knew everybody would always remember, and that was pretty special.
David, speaking of Team USA, Greg Popovich is taking over as coach. He actually starts his first training camp with the team this week in Las Vegas. I wanted to know, how has it gone with Pop? And have you been talking to him these last couple of months? He's obviously been extremely challenging times with the loss of his wife and then the Kawhi situation, but yet challenging with a new team and the Team USA. Have you been talking to him, and how's he doing?
Well, I've only talked to him a couple times.
Well, wait a minute. You say you only talked to Kawhi a couple times. Now you're saying you only talked to Greg Popovich a couple times. So does he have personality issues also?
The last I talked to him was at Aaron's funeral in Colorado, and that was, it's been a very tough time for him. You don't lose the love of your life and not be impacted, and then all the drama, I think, is really almost secondary that's going on, around the team. But I do think he's hanging in there. He's a tough guy. It's hard to even imagine, him being the one that needs support because, you try to support him and, he's always the tough guy. But I think he's handling it and he's moving forward. I mean, obviously, he and RC have done the work that they've needed to do to keep this team moving forward. But
Greg Popovich reminds me of Gene Hackman in Crimson Tide. That tough-ass old white man that's always barking at everybody, walking up and down the halls with that little dog.
But I do think it's been a tough summer for him.
Unbelievable. Well, he's got people like you there for him. I know that means a lot to him. It means a lot to the kids in San Antonio and, as you note, across the country who are getting the benefit of your educational initiatives. Thank you so much. everything you do in those communities and joining us, of course, today. We love it. And of course, guys, I got to say, we do a distant replay most days, right, where we show a highlight. It's July 23rd. There is not a basketball highlight. So we're showing the Admiral, gosh darn it, today's distant replay, a highlight from 1997. Witness the greatness.
What was he doing?
David Robinson was a spectacular athlete. He just couldn't mess with Akeem Olajuwon. That was his problem. But anyway, that's pretty much it on the David Robinson observations on Kawhi. I also think that because Kawhi Leonard is an introvert, it's very easy for people to get on TV and try to marginalize him, castigate him, make him out to be crazy, because that's what people normally do to introverts. They like people who they view to be subservient to them to be fully transparent, and if not, they're going to go into mudslinging mode. But it is what it is. All's well that ends well. But anyway, peace.